maybe you can give us like a summary or a key takeaways for our listeners in terms of what they can take home with them today from our discussion and how they can learn to implement it into their lives.
So appealing to mostly our audience who's going to be coaches, you know the phrase that goes, are we eating to live or living to eat? I'm going to rephrase that and say, are we working to live or living to work?
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to our podcast series, Crucial Conversations. I'm Sukaina Takim. I'm a psychologist and mental health counselor and your host for this podcast series. October is World Mental Health Month, and in its honor and recognition of the World Health Organization's theme for 2024, it is time to prioritize mental health in the workplace. Today's episode is dedicated to exploring the importance of mental health or mental health well-being at work. I'm excited to welcome Sayyeda, an organizational psychologist with a deep passion for creating successful, fulfilling, and happy workplaces. Together, we'll dive into strategies for fostering mental health in the professional environments and why it's crucial for both employees and organizations. Welcome, Karibu Sana Sayyeda. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's also a pleasure to be here and talk about this.
Great. I think it's really, really important, and it's something that is much, much needed. I mean, we spend a lot more time at work than we do at home.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe you can start off with a little background about yourself and your professional career.
Yeah, so obviously my name is Sayyeda. I did my bachelor's in psychology, and then I recently graduated with a master's in organizational psychology. And I just have a deep passion for workplace wellness and just building a workplace that's happy and, you know, just seeing employees flourish more, especially in DAR, where it's not yet where it should be or where we'd want it to be.
Yes, agreed. I think the awareness is there, but the implementation is yet to catch up. And that's where you come in. Okay, great. So when we say workplace wellness, what do we mean? What does mental health in the workplace entail or encapsulate?
So it's just an all-encompassing term which refers to just happiness at work, creating a balance of employees and employers' needs, and just, you know, managing a happy and flourishing workplace where employees want to come every day and they're giving their best. And so that we are preventing the problems to arise like, you know, depression, stress, burnout. And it's just allowing everyone to, you know, as you said, we spend so much time at work. So we make sure that we're actually, you know, flourishing and we're actually enjoying what we're doing rather than it being a chore, which sometimes it does become.
Okay, so I think just going to work happy, being happy at work and leaving work without those kind of frustrations and feeling like, oh my God, this is on repeat for me. Okay, all right. Okay, I think I would like us to narrow it down. So in terms of our community and of course the wider society, what are the cultural challenges that we face? This is a very newish concept. How do we get people to understand that there's nothing wrong with being happy at work? I don't think that everybody has always seen it to be a chore or like an effort to get to work, but how do we make it in a way that it is enjoyable? It's an enjoyable experience.
So if we start with the DAR or Tanzania in general, that community, there's still that stigma when you think of mental health. Now, if you put that into work, it's completely unknown. So that's one of the big barriers that we face in that community. And then together with that, it's the accessibility of any resources. Sometimes it's about financial things where people don't want to pay for programs or they don't want to allow counseling. And it's just that mindset that get on with it. But then if we go into the Koja population, it creates there's more specific problems. So the four that I personally think is firstly the glorified workaholic lifestyle. And definitely it's that feeling of, yes, men in the past were the main breadwinners, which meant that their mindset was that I need to make sure that I bring the money home and work is my success. And the way that they feel fulfilled is when their work is fulfilled, rather than everything else that surrounds them, like relationships, family, community, religion, all of that. Yes, there is some aspects, but it's still that glorification of I need to always be busy, I need to always be on. So that's one. And then the second is just the generational shift and that difference, where I can see it in, for example, my dad versus my husband, where my dad is always thinking about work, even when he's at home, even on a Sunday. But my husband, for example, knows when to create that boundary and just turn off a little after he comes home and maybe prioritize other things and his hobbies rather than thinking work is everything. But the younger population also has other issues like the whole technology and always being on. You have this device on you, and if your phone, obviously, work is always on the phone, you have challenges with that. And then remote working from COVID means that sometimes at home you just don't have that boundary where you don't know how to separate it. So as much as there is that generational difference, there's young and old. And then the third one is just about women. And, women culturally in like the Khojas, they weren't working all the time. And now you see an increase in women joining the workforce. But are we reflecting on our workforce and are we accommodating the needs of women? For example, women are thought to be like caregivers. So they have responsibilities as daughters first, and then as wives, and then eventually as mothers. But if they are working and you don't have flexible hours for them, obviously they will eventually burn out, which causes problems for you as an employer, and as an employee, you're struggling. So those, I feel, are the four key, not issues, but key components of the struggles that we might face in the community, in our community.
Okay, those are very valid points in terms of, I understand that glorification that happens, and we see that a lot. And now with an influx of women in the workforce and how they balance their responsibilities, because a lot of the household responsibility still lies on the women, whether they're working or not. Mm-hmm. And that's, in my opinion, a full-time job. Like it's 24/7. And creating that kind of work-life balance. And I think all the employees and the employers, as you said, play a role in that, in terms of creating flexibility or creating times where it's easier to manage. Okay, that's very, very interesting. I think the point I would like to pick up on is the generations. And I believe right now, from what I've been seeing in my research, is the generational gaps are a significant concern, especially in the larger companies where the employees are larger numbers, so they have the whole spectrum. So you have kind of in the managerial positions of people who've been there for a long time, in their 50s, 60s, and then you have the Gen Zs coming in with a completely different mindset towards work and how it should be. They have different energies. How do you think employers can attempt to create a kind of a balance in the needs for the different generations? I think we have 4 generations in the workforce right now. How can that be tackled to a certain degree?
I think for starters, it's the whole starting with flexible working. For example, the older population thinks that, I need to be at work from 9 to 5. I need to be in the office to do work. While Gen Z feels like I can go to work or do work whenever I feel like. If it means I work better at night, I work better at night. So I think it's about understanding what your employees need. So that's an open conversation where it's like, what works for you and how can I accommodate you? If it means that, if you have queries and during the time where you're like maybe not working, you can still answer them, but it means that you can get your work done whenever you'd like, which I think is harder to understand with people, especially here, where it's like, go to work, finish your work, but it's not about whenever you'd like. So I think it's about having those open conversations about how to accommodate people and your employees. And then it's also about, the younger population empowering their ideas, what they have to say, but also understanding that the older population has been there for a while. They understand the economy, the way things run. So it's empowering both of them, but then finding that balance where it's not just the older population that gets the decision making, but it's also not the younger who has these wild ideas that we do and then realize that maybe it needed to be, delved down a bit. So it's about just having those conversations and finding those balances between the two, because end of the day, we can work together. It's just about if we're empowering each other to share more.
Okay, so I think what I hear is communication, empowerment across the board. And that experience is also valid. So the older generation or the ones who've been there a longer time, the experience matters, but also keeping up with the newer ideas and the new energies that the Gen Zs are bringing in, or the younger generations are bringing in. Okay, and balance. I think everything goes back to communication and balance. Communication and balance. Okay, if we take it back to our community again, there's a high prevalence of family-owned businesses that go down the generations. I'm sure they have different challenges because it's based in the family, there's the responsibilities, there's expectations. How do we manage to create that kind of work-life balance? And as you said, try and leave work at work and not bring it home, especially when there's been friction, or when you're on holiday, for example, and all you do is talk about work, or dinner table conversations are always work. How do we attempt to manage that in terms of specifically for family-owned businesses?
So I think, as you said, there's that blurred line where it's like, are we taking family to work and are we bringing work home, that sort of thing. And I think we need to focus on those blurred lines, that when we're at work, we can talk about work, but then prioritizing that recovery period. So if you think about it, that you're thinking about work from the time you wake up, so maybe at like 7, 8, until 5 p.m. And then you come home and you're still thinking about when's your recovery period? When are you prioritizing yourself? So I think when it comes to family-owned businesses specifically, it's about stopping yourself and asking yourself, can this be discussed tomorrow? Does it have to be done tonight? And, just understanding that everyone needs their time to recover in their own way. And yes, there might be some people, like older generations, who feel like they need to always work. And, you can't stop them. So understanding that if you're working with the younger population, understanding that maybe they want to come home and they want to go to the gym, or they want to, recover in their own way, sports, that sort of thing. And understanding that that's okay. They don't need to always be available for you. And then, as you said, when it comes to conflict, I think the biggest thing is separating family and your responsibilities at work. Because when you think about it, as you said, the expectations. Now, if it's my brother, I might expect a lot from him because I've grown up with him, I've seen him. I think, oh, you can do this, why aren't you doing this? Compared to if it's just a colleague where I'm like, okay, I've only known you for this period, these are your capabilities, I'm not gonna push you. But it's understanding those expectations and what are you doing? Like, are you raising the expectations so high that the other person is burning themselves out and it's leading them to not perform the way they are? So it's about understanding those expectations. And when it comes to decision making, it's about that, hierarchical structure where it's like maybe, the older generation makes decisions, or if it's someone who thinks, oh, like, I went to uni, I studied this, I know best. But it's understanding that everyone has an opinion, and end of the day, like, we're family. So as we do at home, understand everyone's opinions. That aspect we should take to work, where you sit down, have those open conversations, understand why someone might be thinking the way they are. And I think the most important thing is just that power dynamic where, yes, it does exist, but we try to understand everyone around us so that, it doesn't spill over into our relationships. And just as hard as it is, stop work when the time is up, especially on weekends. That's the time for someone to recover and come back fresh the next day. And as you said, on holidays, I think it's very hard because now you have a phone on you all the time. So you feel like you need to be on. But it's about prioritizing that, you know, this is my time away. Maybe even if you're gone for a week, you know, when you're first trying to start building those boundaries, maybe take 2 days off where you just don't reply to anything that's urgent. Like, end of the day, sometimes most of the work we do is not urgent that right now someone's gonna like die, for example. So it's understanding that boundary where it's like, you know, starting off small, 1 day, 2 day, and then seeing what it does to you, because the next day you'll come back fresher. And then when you are on holiday, completely trying to turn off, as hard as it is.
Okay, there's lots of interesting points there. So I think just accommodation, levels of understanding with regard to expectations. And I think if, again, it goes back down to communication. If everybody's able to communicate and say, look, we really need this kind of time, you know, after work hours or on the weekends, we need that kind of distance from work. I know some people tend to, because they need to prep for the week, they do, and I do advise this sometimes in terms of just allocate maybe an hour or maximum 2 hours on a Sunday when you're prepping for the week to maybe just check your emails so that you know what the week is leading up to. You can do that, but you have to be very disciplined with it. Not that, you know, you get into your emails and then you're sitting on your laptop for hours on end and you forget that there are other priorities that you have in terms of your family, in terms of yourself, if it's community work, whatever it is. But just, I think the discipline, the mindfulness, and that open communication is very important. Thank you. I think that's really helpful specifically for our family-owned businesses, which we have a lot of. Interesting. So now I think we can get into how to create strategies to implement in terms of maybe you can highlight to us maybe the most common mental health concerns that we see coming out of the workplace. What do people struggle with when they're feeling overwhelmed or when it's just too much for them? What do we see a lot of?
I think it's definitely that thing where you might be feeling burnt out, but you don't realize it. You just think that, oh, it's a busy period or it'll get better. But you don't realize that you are not finding that time to recover. You're not prioritizing yourself. And again, if you don't prioritize yourself, no one will. So it comes down to that in itself. And for example, if we think of as much as we sometimes don't appreciate the mental health as it is, but if we think about what it can lead to in the physical sense, because sometimes it's easier for us to go to a doctor than a counselor. If we have a prolonged exposure to like stress, chronic stress, where every day you're waking up and you're just constantly on, that can lead to like higher blood pressure. You have inflammation, or just, you know, your eating habits, for example, your sleeping habits, how much you're taking care of yourself, because it might mean that you're not finding that balance of your meals. You might forget to eat, or you're not sleeping enough because, you know, you can't find the, you know, switch that's like, okay, now it's time to wind down and sleep. Or if it means that you might be indulging in junk food, like stress eating, for example. All of these things, some of these things can have a direct effect on cardiovascular disease, because increased blood pressure, eating habits, and that inflammation can eventually, over a prolonged period, affect your heart health. And if we want to frame it in a way of, you know, advising people to actually take care of themselves, think about the prolonged exposure that you have and what it could lead to eventually. But it's about understanding that all of this is, you know, not going to help you in the future. If you always want to be flourishing, then you should prioritize yourself right now. Especially if you see like our fathers, they have worked from maybe the age of like 18 or even before. And if you see them now, they, you know, sometimes you can understand from what they say that they are feeling really burnt out and they don't find the happiness in work that they used to before. So if we're talking to the younger generation, it's definitely like, telling them that, prioritize it now so that you don't feel these things later. And if you think about the spillover effect of, just irritability and all of these things that come from the chronic stress, it kind of puts a pressure on your personal relationships, because you're bringing that home, for example, and that irritability can cause a strain on your relationships with people, because any small thing that can happen, and it's exacerbated because you're taking your stresses from from work to home. So definitely, if we want to create a healthy lifestyle, it starts from now, and it starts from us. As much as employers can do for us, it's about us at the end of the day, communicating what we need, understanding what we need, and knowing what habits are unhealthy for ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there was a lot that you shared there. And in terms of leaning on those unfavorable coping mechanisms, because, I'm so stressed. So you don't even realize it, but you're stress eating. So you're finding those sweet treats or those salty, treats, the spicy ones. So I think it is so important to learn how to create that kind of balance across the board. So if it was with your work, with your family time, with your responsibilities, with your food, with your sleep, and sleep is huge. I think now there's a lot more awareness on the need for sleeping well, sleeping deeply, and the timings that you sleep as well, is really, really important. Managing your kind of self-care. So, social responsibilities, faith-based responsibilities, or it's a lot, and just creating a balance around that. And as you said, it wasn't there. I mean, I think the awareness wasn't there. The research wasn't there 20, 30, 40 years ago, but we have it today. And how you manage to create it for yourself so that you have that, you're able to be in the workforce for that much longer, if that's something that works for you, or when you do feel you've given enough, you're healthy enough to enjoy the rest of your days. And and I agree in terms of the generations above us, they worked, and that was all it was. And now, when they're reaching those ages of retirement or slowing down, they feel very lost, because it's always been work. And now, how do we fill our days, and what do we do with ourselves? So it's really, really necessary, I think, in terms of the balance and the approach that we have with today's generation, and the research that we have in terms of creating that work-life balance.
And then also it's about the younger generation and the whole Instagram and these unachievable lifestyles that we see, that we need to feel like, not a competition, but we need to achieve something by the time we're 25, or we need to have this by we're 25, we need to have a house, married, all of those things. But in reality, that's just 1% of people. And if we're exposed to that all the time, we think that money is everything. We need to earn hard and fast. When if we look at our fathers, it was over time that they built what they have. And it's about being mindful of what we're consuming. So as much as older populations, the younger population might have more challenges in the way that they have this additional pressure that's external rather than that internal pressure that our fathers had.
I think you say it beautifully in terms of the impact of technology, and especially the impact of social media on the current generations. And it's definitely a real challenge, and across the board. I mean, when it comes to parenting, or it comes to lifestyle, or it comes to work pressure, all of it. I think technology has created, as good as it is and as needed as it is, and it has its positives, but it has a huge impact on the negative side as well. And I think, again, it comes back down to balance. Understanding that what you see on Instagram is just what you're seeing in that frame. You're not seeing what is around. Being mindful about that is really, I think you said it beautifully in terms of it's the external pressures of today's day and age. Workplace strategies. What can employers do for their employees, for their companies, for themselves? What can they do? What are those strategies that they can implement?
So firstly, as we've said before, just having that open door policy open conversations about what works for others, what can the workplace accommodate. Obviously, you know, employees will have a lot of needs. We won't always meet those needs, but it's about giving them a little bit at a time. If it's about flexible working, that's what it is. And just understanding that if you want your business to achieve and to flourish, you need good employees. And good employees are those who prioritize their mental health, understand what they're going through. So I think definitely first it's open conversations about things, how they work. And then the second thing is resources. Now, as a business, you can't always be providing for your employees all the time. That's unrealistic. But it's understanding that, are you giving your employees bite-sized resources that they can use? Whether it's a seminar at a time, workshop at a time, so that you are equipping them with the, you know, strategies that they can employ. So it's not always just about what employers can do, but it's also, as employees, what can we do to prioritize ourselves? So those resources can end up helping employees in the, you know, long run. And then lastly, just about the work-life balance. So, like, you know, asking yourself, are you a good role model for work-life balance? Yes, you might be promoting it to your employees, but are you messaging them at, like, I don't know, 9 p.m., asking them about something, and then again, expecting them to reply? So are you role modeling what you want them to be? So I think reflecting on that and understanding that some people need that time to recover. It might look like different things, but, you know, understanding it, yes, you might be working at 9 p.m., that person does not need to reply you at 9 p.m. They will reply you when they're ready to reply you. As long as they're getting their work done, then it should be okay.
Okay. So again, it comes to communication, providing the resources to the extent that the company can manage. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of you cannot meet every employee's needs. I know some companies do have like running clubs, so then, you know, the employees get together once or twice a week and they run, or those who are not too much on the fitness side, they have book clubs. So you can, you know, you come together once a month, you decide on a book and you discuss it. So it just, and again, I think it provides that connection between the employees and you feel like you're part of something. You spend so many hours together, but sometimes you don't know. And this creates that kind of oneness and togetherness in the workplace. And it has shown that it does go further, because when they do projects together, there's that level of cohesiveness in terms of they know each other on different levels. It's not always work. They have that kind of personal connection. And it just helps, I think, with managing better in the workplace. I know of some companies that have like a safe space or a room where you can go in, meditate, or just, you know, just sit there and be with your thoughts. And there's no stigma attached to it. I know that is still a work in progress. But there's just the space for you to just go and just feel like, okay, I can just be here on my own and I can let it out. I can attempt to process it. There could be books, there could be a little bit of, you know, mindfulness activities, coloring, whatever it is that helps the person at that time. And I think those are really good, not too expensive, not too much in terms of what the company has to do, and it's provided for the employees and it's available for them whenever they need it. So if we break it down completely to a personal level, you know, I understand the boundaries, but is there anything else that maybe we can add for our viewers to take home in terms of specifically for themselves and how to manage workplace? Because you'll hear a lot that I made a mistake and I got screamed at, or I had a fallout with my teammate. Is there any way that can be managed a little bit better?
I think it's about like stepping away from the situation, and when those things happen, understanding your emotions, how you're feeling, and then also understanding where maybe whoever like was your manager, for example, where he's coming from. It might be, you know, having that whole thing where, yes, they might be also like overwhelmed, stressed, and it might not, like, you know, it just has come out onto you. And, you know, just not internalizing those things. Because as soon as we start to internalize it, it just creates not only an effect on ourselves, but also that relationship that we have with our teams. everyone has their own stresses, and taking that step back, I feel, is actually understanding yourself, them, and then when you come back to it, you're like, you know, it was just a hiccup and I know what I'm going to do better next time. And then it's also about like how you are integrating work into your life, your practices with, you know, are you bringing work home? That sort of thing that we talked about. Are we taking home to work sometimes? Because that's also another issue where you're bringing that pressure that you have at home, or if something happened and you take it to work, you might, you know, get irritated and take that out on someone who doesn't deserve it. So I think also understanding those things is very important, because it's not only about work, but also you can bring home to work. And then also, as we said about boundaries, and that self-awareness is also very important. But yeah, I think that's
okay. Yeah, well, there's a lot there. I think the point that you said in the beginning, in terms of learning how to regulate your own emotions, understanding the scenario from a step back. When we're really into it and we're like, oh, you know, they said this, they said that, they looked at me like that, it really snowballs in the head, and we start associating other things, and it just becomes bigger, and it's not meant to be. But taking that step back, being self-aware, and, you know, okay, maybe that person is not having a good day, maybe I'm not having a good day, however it works in the situation, but just being the bigger person in terms of, okay, it's not the end of the world, right? Okay, of course we understand it does hurt, and you know, sometimes it's not right, or it wasn't needed, but just giving it a little bit of space to settle a little bit, and then tackling it if need be with in a calm conversation, or in a calm space. I think those are good, because we tend to internalize a lot. I think that that happens to everybody, of course, but learning how to manage that internalization better just makes everything easier. Okay.
Like for me, if I'm feeling very upset or like annoyed about something, you know, just going like working out or playing a sport just gets that, you know, not anger, but gets those emotions out, where you come back and you're like, no, it's really not that bad. So it's about finding that recovery that works for you and prioritizing that, whether your recovery looks like spending time with family, or whether it looks like, you know, your hobbies, whether it's, I don't know, cooking, baking, gym, that sort of thing. But finding what works for you, so that you're not always thinking about that one thing that happened at work, but you're thinking of other things that are other aspects of your life, so that work is not the end, you know, goal or everything in your life.
Very true. So using kind of a distraction, and using something that you enjoy as a distraction. As you said, you know, any kind of physical movement is a release of those pent-up frustrations. You know, if it is a hobby that you like to do, you know, go for it. Just using that time as, and then, you know, I always like to say, look at it as self-care. You know, don't feel like, I'm taking myself out, so I'm being selfish and I should be doing that. And we have a lot of that playing in our minds, but just understanding and taking away, 45 minutes to get a workout in, and then I'm going to come back, and I know I'm going to come back refreshed, and I will have in some way processed everything, even though you're not actually processing it at that time, but the process does start. And you come back and you're able to tackle what you need to tackle. And just looking at it from a very different perspective, I think helps with the understanding on the need for that recovery period. Yeah. Okay, wonderful.
Especially with like mothers, for example, they might not find that time for themselves. So it's about, as an employer, again, you know, finding and educating them about what it means, understanding that, you know, you don't always need to be, you know, on for work, for your responsibilities as a mother. You can find time for yourself, but it's accommodating that for women, especially at work. Not dismissing men, but specifically as mothers.
Very true. I think that's absolutely valid, in terms of women tend to forget, especially if we have young children or multiple children. It's a lot of responsibilities. How do we find that time for ourselves? Like I do hear that, you know, that I'm working full time, and then I manage to get a little bit of a workout, you know, just in, and then I have so many home responsibilities and children responsibilities. I don't have time for myself, you know. And sometimes I say, can we find 10 minutes? Can we find a little bit of pockets of time where you can start that recovery process so that you can go back in for the next 4 hours of work a little bit more in control of your emotions, so that when you go home, you're not going home with all that baggage. You know, you're going home a little bit more relaxed. You know, just sometimes it's finding what works for you. If it's pockets of time, if it's waking up a little bit earlier, if it is finding that 20 minutes after the kids are in bed and then just using that time for yourself. And again, I think that's a valid point in terms of how moms specifically can manage their work-life balance and find time for themselves. Okay, Sayyeda, I think we have discussed a lot, and I think we've managed to identify lots of places where employers can make the changes, employees can make the changes, and on a personal level, where you can find the balance, the boundaries that you can place. Maybe you can give us like a summary or a key takeaways for our listeners in terms of what they can take home with them today from our discussion and how they can learn to implement it into their lives.
So appealing to mostly our audience who's going to be coaches, you know the phrase that goes, are we eating to live or living to eat? I'm going to rephrase that and say, are we working to live or living to work? And I want that to be the key takeaway. Anytime you think about your situation, your boundaries, asking yourself that question so that you understand what's your recovery time, what's your boundaries that you're setting, just what is the spillover effect on my relationships. And it just allows that, you know, awareness that we need sometimes, because when we're encompassed in work, the work life, we don't realize what we're doing. So then I think it's about asking ourselves that one question. Are we working to live or living to work?
I think that just nailed it. Absolutely. I don't think I have anything else more to add to that, but absolutely. I think if you can just keep that as a mantra for yourself, it will kind of force you to create that work-life balance. Thank you for that. I think it's a great way to leave our viewers with. So, you know, creating that conducive environment, finding what resonates with you to create the balance, and switching off, relaxing after work, and finding or using that time to bond, to self-care. Absolutely. Great. So thank you so much, Sayyeda. It has been a very empowering conversation today in how we can implement work-life balance for ourselves, how companies can do it, how employees can do it, and how we can do it for in the home as well in terms of our self-care. And I think I have pinpointed a few places that I can take home with me today. Wonderful. Thank you. I think it was very, very empowering.
Thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity.
No, most welcome. Thank you, viewers, for taking time out to watch, to listen to us today. I hope the topic has been engaging and you have managed as well to identify places where you can implement the work-life balance or the work-life integration for yourselves. It is World Mental Health Month, so this is what we're promoting. I would like to leave you all with a quote that I think resonates very well with our conversation today. Balance is not something you find, it is something you create. And I think that encapsulates everything that Sayyeda has been saying today. So thank you again for tuning in. Do be on the lookout for our last episode in the series in a few weeks. Thank you very much.